I've spent most of my life chasing questions that refuse to die. And Oak Island is the biggest one of all. Every time I stand on this ground, I'm reminded that this place doesn't give up its secrets easily. The wind, the trees, even the shoreline feel like they're guarding something. That day, as the wind tore across the island, I felt an undeniable tension in the air, like the island itself knew what was coming. For centuries, people have come here believing they were on the verge of discovery, only to leave broken, bankrupt, or worse. Oak Island has earned its reputation, but something about this moment felt heavier, different. I wasn't standing there as a treasure hunter. I felt like a witness, someone who had been allowed to arrive at the very edge of a long-planned reveal. What most people don't realize is that Oak Island doesn't feel empty beneath your feet. It feels layered, as if time itself has been stacked underground, one deliberate act on top of another, and deep below us something was waiting, not lost, not forgotten, waiting, sealed away with intention, patience, and an understanding that centuries would pass before anyone stood here again. I didn't yet know it, but we were moments away from touching something that could rewrite the entire Oak Island story, possibly even challenge what we think we know about medieval history. If our suspicions were right, whatever lay hidden below had been placed there around the time the Knights Templar disappeared from the historical record in 1307, vanishing almost overnight along with their greatest secrets. At about 140 feet down, everything changed. The drill didn't behave the way it always had. There was no crumble, no fracture, just resistance. Clean, solid, unmistakably deliberate. What we hit wasn't natural rock. It was a flat engineered stone surface, fitted into place with precision that immediately raised one question in my mind. Why would anyone go to this much effort unless they were protecting something? We shut everything down. I moved closer, brushing away the thick, wet soil. The shape revealed itself slowly, like the island was allowing us to see only what it wanted, and what emerged was undeniable. This wasn't an accident of nature. It was architecture. It was planning. It was human intention reaching across centuries. When the ground-penetrating radar data came back, the room went silent. Behind that stone slab was a void. Sharp-edged, rectangular, and completely out of place. A hollow space carved where solid earth should have been. The monitor traced its outline with glowing certainty. You could feel it in your chest before you could explain it with words. Marty suggested it could be a chamber, but to me it felt far more significant than that. I remember saying, almost without thinking, this is a chamber, this is an entrance, because that's what it felt like, a threshold. Then came the iron traces. Embedded deep within the stone were signs of forged metal, iron shaped by fire and human hands, possibly hinges, possibly locking mechanisms. This wasn't just something that had been sealed. It was meant to be opened, but only by someone who knew it was there. My thoughts immediately returned to the mysterious stone triangle, discovered on the island over a century ago, dismissed by many as coincidence, but Oak Island doesn't deal in coincidence. What if that triangle wasn't decoration or chance? What if it was a directional marker, an ancient guide pointing straight to this very spot? The realization settled over all of us at once. The door, described in old accounts, dismissed as metaphor or exaggeration, wasn't symbolic at all. It was literal, a real engineered gateway hidden with extraordinary care, designed to survive time, water, and human curiosity. And then there were the stories that came long before any written record. Mi'kmaq oral traditions speak of a buried gate, Something placed deep within the island and sealed by powerful forces, a place bound by fire and water, a warning passed down through generations. Disturb it, and you release both reward and consequence. When I stood in front of that stone, something became unmistakably clear to me. This wasn't folklore anymore. This wasn't rumor, legend, or island mythology passed down to scare people away. This was history, quiet, patient history that had been waiting for someone to finally recognize it. Years earlier, I had come across obscure French explorer journals from the 1600 seconds. Most historians barely mention them. The pages are fragile, the handwriting uneven. The ink faded, as if time itself tried to erase the words, but one sentence never left my mind: a stone threshold sealed by sacred rites. For centuries, that line was dismissed as poetic nonsense. Standing there now, staring at that slab, it felt less like poetry and more like a confession written too early. Marty and I began connecting dots that had never been placed side by side before. Across medieval Europe, the most powerful orders didn't just hide objects, they constructed sanctuaries, sacred spaces designed to outlast empires. Places protected by knowledge, geometry, and belief, rather than force. And suddenly, Oak Island didn't feel like an accidental hiding spot. It felt intentional, like someone chose this island for a reason. That realization changed how I thought about everything else. The reports of strange lights drifting over the swamp, the shadows seen moving near the money pit. For years, people laughed them off as ghost stories. But what if they weren't ghosts? What if they were echoes? Rituals repeated, signals maintained, a site never truly abandoned. Maybe those lights weren't meant to scare people away. Maybe they were meant to remind us this place is still being watched. What unsettled me most was understanding that Oak Island wasn't engineered out of fear. It was engineered out of reverence. This wasn't a trap built in panic. It was a ceremonial construction where faith, astronomy, mathematics, and secrecy merged into a single purpose. Whoever built this place believed deeply in what they were protecting. When we examined the stone more closely, that belief became visible. The carvings weren't crude. They were precise, circles within circles, stars positioned with intent, crosses repeated in a rhythm that felt almost musical. This wasn't decoration, it was language, one written in geometry instead of words. As specialists studied the markings, a startling pattern emerged. The symbols aligned with known medieval cipher systems, rotational codes designed to conceal meaning unless viewed in the correct sequence. This wasn't just art carved into stone, it was a mechanism, a physical code. Then came the moment that stopped me cold. When the star alignments were mapped, they matched a specific night sky, one that appeared only once in recorded history. The year was 1307, the year the Knights Templar were erased from Europe, arrested, hunted, and silenced. That wasn't coincidence, that was a message. Suddenly, Oak Island wasn't isolated anymore. It was connected. The same symbolic language carved into Rosslyn Chapel, the same sacred geometry, the same fingerprints of a brotherhood that didn't disappear but relocated. Knowledge carried across the ocean, hidden where no king or church could reach it. Weeks of study led us to a final, astonishing conclusion. Those markings weren't symbolic warnings. They were instructions. This stone wasn't meant to remain sealed forever. It was designed to open, but only for someone who understood the system. The moment the lighter data came in, I knew Oak Island was done hiding. The screen didn't show chaos or collapse. It showed order, precision, purpose. The stone wasn't wedged into the earth, it was fused to it. Its edges were cut with mechanical teeth, locked into the bedrock, as if the island itself had been engineered around this one object. That realization hit harder than any theory we'd ever discussed. This wasn't a barrier meant to stop people. It was a mechanism meant to endure. Someone had built this with an understanding of pressure, water, and time that shouldn't have existed here. Not in the Middle Ages, not on this island. The scans kept revealing more. Deep within the stone were reinforced pivot points, hinges, strengthened with metal that immediately raised eyebrows when the alloy was analyzed. The result felt surreal. It wasn't local, it wasn't colonial, it matched medieval Iberian metallurgy, the same regions where the Knights Templar thrived before they were erased from Europe. That wasn't speculation, that was hard science. Marty pushed back like he always does. Could it be later construction, imported materials, a forgotten project? I wanted that answer too, but Oak Island doesn't deal in convenient explanations. The carbon dates arrived like a verdict. Oak timbers sealed behind the stone fell squarely between 1290 and 1310. The exact years the Templars vanished. Their fleets missing, their records destroyed, the timeline locked into place. What stood before us wasn't a hoax or a trap. It was a medieval gate weighing more than 20 tons, positioned with precision modern engineers still struggle to explain, and it had done exactly what it was designed to do: survive. When I ran my hand across the carvings, I felt something deeper than excitement. This wasn't built to threaten intruders. It was built to wait. Whoever sealed this believed the future would eventually arrive at this moment. This wasn't about treasure, it was about trust. Then the drill bit kissed the stone's edge, and the island responded. A violent hiss tore through the air as compressed breath escaped from the chamber, air sealed away for more than 700 years. It was like the past itself had exhaled. The smell hit immediately. Metallic, chemical, ancient sensors lit up mercury vapor. Historians know the significance of that. Mercury was used to preserve sacred objects and to punish those who didn't belong. Even sealed, this place was defending itself. I stopped the team, not out of fear but respect. Whatever lay beyond that stone had been protected by people who believed their oath mattered more than their lives. They weren't hiding something they feared losing. They were safeguarding something they believed the world wasn't ready for. As fractures spread across the slab, dust filled our lights, mixing with air untouched since the Middle Ages. A fragment broke free, and through the opening, we didn't see emptiness. We felt weight, a darkness that wasn't empty but occupied. Waiting, a recovered oak splinter confirmed it. 1290 to 1310, the same narrow window, the same historical silence. At that point, the truth was unavoidable. What vanished from Europe didn't disappear. It traveled, and when the slab finally slid loose, grinding against its stone locks, the chamber opened fully. Oak Island hadn't been hiding treasure. It had been guarding a decision left behind for the future to finally make. The moment I stepped inside, my instincts told me this place didn't belong to the island we knew. It felt separated, cut off from the surface world by more than stone. The air was dense and unmoving, like it had been waiting. When the torchlight swept across the walls, they didn't look rough or natural. They were smooth, carefully finished, coated in lime plaster designed to resist water and salt, a technique mastered around the Mediterranean, not here, and certainly not at this point in history. Whoever built this understood the ocean as an enemy and planned accordingly. As the light continued forward, shapes began to emerge from the walls. But pigments, red stains pressed into the plaster itself, Symbols appeared slowly, almost reluctantly. Circles representing the sun's slender crescents, and then a seven-pointed star, placed with unmistakable precision. I had seen that geometry before. It echoed ancient protective symbols tied to hidden knowledge and guardianship. These weren't decorations meant to impress. They were marks meant to warn and to sanctify. The construction told the same story. Wooden frameworks lined the passage. Their joints fitted so cleanly they looked modern. Mortise and tenon cuts, locked together with confidence, not improvisation. This wasn't the work of colonists or pirates digging in desperation. This was organized labor. Trained hands, people following a design laid out long before the first beam was set in place. With every step it became clear this wasn't a tunnel built to hide wealth. It was built to preserve something far more important. The scale, the care, the symbolism, all of it pointed to purpose. This place wasn't a vault. It was a refuge, a sacred space concealed beneath layers of earth and time. Then I noticed the scent, faint but unmistakable resin oil, and beneath it the lingering trace of something burned deliberately, incense, long gone but not forgotten. It was the smell of ceremony, the kind that tells you words were spoken here, not casually, but with meaning. That feeling intensified when the passage opened suddenly into a rounded chamber. The acoustics shifted instantly. Sound didn't disappear. It returned a footstep, echoed back fuller than it left. A breath seemed to circle the room before fading. This space had been designed to carry voices, to magnify them. Silence wasn't its purpose. Expression was. As I swept my light across the chamber, it felt like the walls were answering us. Small recesses began to appear. Carefully carved pockets in the stone, each one deliberate, evenly spaced, and intentional. These weren't storage holes or damage from collapse. They were placements, and inside them traces remained. Corroded metal shaped like blades, darkened chain fragments, shards of pottery, still carrying whispers of color. None of it was whole, but every piece belonged. This wasn't debris, it was memory, evidence that people had stood here before us and chose to leave something behind, not in haste but with purpose. The ground beneath us told the same story. When samples were taken, the soil came back saturated with ash and carbon. Burned wood, bone, oils that don't exist naturally in this part of the world. Fire had been used here again and again, not recklessly but carefully. This wasn't destruction, it was ceremony. A place repeatedly awakened by flame. You could sense it in the atmosphere. The air felt heavier beneath the dome, as if the chamber itself remembered every torch that had once burned here. At the center of the space rose a low stone platform, perfectly shaped, perfectly measured. It wasn't decorative. Spiral channels cut into its surface suggested alignment, calibration, balance. This wasn't about worship, it was about activation. I knelt beside it and traced the grooves with my fingers, and in that moment the meaning shifted. This wasn't an altar. It was a component part of a larger mechanism designed to respond when everything was set just right. That idea solidified when one of the crew tapped the platform with a metal tool. The sound that came back wasn't solid stone. It was hollow, a deep resonant echo that told us the truth. There was another space beneath us, a hidden level, sealed and waiting. As we carefully cleared the floor, its secret emerged. What looked like continuous stone was actually a series of interlocked panels, cut so precisely they blended together. But faint lines betrayed them, intersections forming a maze-like pattern etched into the floor itself. I followed the lines with my hand and noticed subtle wear, as though pressure had shifted these stones before. They weren't fixed. They were meant to move, to slide, to respond to weight applied in the right sequence. The design was instantly familiar. Medieval Templar sites across Europe describe puzzle floors, hidden entrances beneath chapels that only revealed themselves to those who understood the system. And here we were, across an ocean, standing on the same idea, the same knowledge. That recognition didn't make the decision easier. One wrong move could bring the ceiling down. Marty was right to be cautious. This place demanded respect. But what convinced me was the precision. This wasn't built to punish understanding. It was built to reward it. We redistributed our weight carefully, using timber to balance pressure across the floor. Every move was deliberate. Every adjustment mattered, and then slowly the island responded. Stone groaned. Dust drifted down from above, and one section of the floor slid back, smooth and controlled, revealing a staircase descending into darkness below. Cold air rushed upward, sharp and clean, like a breath drawn after centuries of silence. We descended one step at a time, the passage narrowing until it stopped us cold. In front of us stood another barrier, an oak door reinforced with iron, sealed with pitch that still gleamed black under the light. Heavy crossbars stretched across it. A clear warning: this wasn't a door meant to welcome. It was meant to endure. And then we saw the mark. Carved into the ironwork was a double cross, the same symbol found on Templar graves across Europe. A signature left without doubt, a declaration of presence. This wasn't legend anymore. This was ownership.